Good evening and welcome back to Kivumbi 2022. We are delighted to have your company with us this evening. We're talking about political intolerance. When you have a society unwilling to accommodate views contrarian and opposite or not matching what it is they believe, it creates situations such as what we're discussing today, our special focus on elections, because in under a year we will be going to the 9th of August general election. It's a transition election. The stakes are high, and so cases already of political intolerance being witnessed, and stakeholders say this is worth a conversation to ensure that going forward we're clear about what of all of this portends for the country. And so for this conversation, we just heard from the DPP. He had a lot to say about the subject. He says he's worried on a scale of 1 to 10. It stands at 7, how concerned he is that 2022 could degenerate if not handled well, and the political class especially held responsible and accountable for their actions, their utterances as well. With us here, our panel this evening, on my immediate right, we have Felix Odhiambo. He's the Executive Director, Electoral Law and Governance. We also have a Commissioner with the National Cohesion and Integration Commission, NCIC. That's Abdulaziz Farah. And on my left, Reverend Sami Wainaina, who's Provost at the All Saints Cathedral. Gentlemen, thank you so much for being with us. And of course, Ken is with us as well. So I'll begin with you, Mr. Farah, because we did talk about your commission with the DPP, and for a long time there was calls to give the NCIC prosecutorial power, that would be how we start resolving the matters, because you have, I think now, a wall of shame. There have been lists of shame, and some of these processes, of course, part of what the Act gives that leeway for you to do, but still it feels like for many it is not enough. What do you have to say?
Yeah, thank you, Wainaina. True, I believe the prosecutorial powers really belong to the DPP, we can't transfer it to NCIC because there is suppression of mandates, so to say. But NCIC needs powers to tame some of these happenings in the country, specifically the hate speech, the intolerance.
What sort of powers?
Well, powers in terms of law, in terms of, for example, if you are given the powers to bar somebody not to be elected, not run for electoral positions, or to be appointed by events, let's say the president, to government positions, you know, but prosecutorial powers, I think, lie with the DPP, and we work closely with him. And so NCIC needs the Act to be strengthened so that it acts as a deterrent to some of these vices that happen in the country.
Yeah. And yet, Felix, the DPP was of the feeling that we have too much legislation. We keep legislating everything, and yet we're still stuck.
Well, to a larger extent, I think it's right on that comment. And I also agree with you during the introductory remarks that you made, and partly what the DPP said. In a scale of 1 to 10, the level of intolerance is about 7. Now, the danger then is that it is 1 year to the next general elections, or under 1 year to the next general elections. And yet, the 2022 elections has comparable risks. If you look at the history of multi-party elections since 1992 to the 2013 and 2017 elections. issues that were identified there still persist. Questions with election management and administration, level of political incitement and the very political rhetoric, if you may, and things like that. But yes, there are laws in place. But the problem with this country is also institutionalized impunity, where laws are, and especially during an election year, are totally rejected. Now, we have the penal code, for example, and the DPP has prosecutorial powers, as well as the DCI, the police, and things like that. But usually in an election year, this law seems to be suspended. And as evidenced by, for example, the by-election that happened in Matungu, where even the IEBC presiding officer was assaulted. Now, we have the Elections Act has the Electoral Code of Conduct, but also that gives the Commission powers to deal with everything, including hate speech, with clear sanctions, including fines and suspension over candidate, among other things. Now, of course, we have the NCIC and the NCIC Act, but also, if you look at it generally, the NCIC has been able to do quite some good work in the past. But yes, we have the NCIC. So it's really not for want of legislation or institutions, but I think the country going into 2022 must have a very comprehensive and holistic discussion on really how we can tame the hate speech. We have the Waki report that gave us causes of political intolerance, gave us the trigger to 207 violence, which was Electoral Commission. Now, if you look at the electoral violence in Africa over the last 10 years, the proximate cause and the trigger has actually been the professionalism or the conduct of the Electoral Commission. That was the case in Kenya in 2007, 2013, and more so in 2017, as evidenced by the Supreme Court judgment that invalidated that election. So yes, we have, and the judiciary, we have all manner of institutions and legislations, but the problem is we haven't quite gotten it right in terms of redressing issues of political intolerance, hate speech, and things like that.
Which is essentially the question we're asking.
Yes.
Why are we still stuck there?
Yes.
The NCIC Act was made law in 2008.
Yes.
When I hear Commissioner Farr refer to needing more powers, it leaves me thinking, from 2008 we are still asking for more powers. But let me take you to the church. From where you sit as a church, and I know you're very passionate about this subject, what is the issue? Is it the issue of laws? Is it the issue of legislation? Is it the decay of the moral fabric? Because if he talks about the suspension of the laws, then you go back to the people and ask yourself, how comes we sit and wait after election and what is enforced?
You see, the church doesn't have a law that would govern people. And that's why the Constitution gives a mandate to institutional bodies to implement.
The church has moral laws.
Yes, I'm coming to moral.
Yes.
But in terms of constitutional law, that is given to institutional bodies. And when we hear them speak as if they are desperate, that as if they don't have power, they actually do have power. I think the problem of impunity in Kenya is where we become prisoners of ourselves, that we are not able to say, no, we must draw a line. Now, let me come now to the church. From our view, the problem in Kenya is lack of a culture that is based on ethics. If you can put all the laws, but when the software of the people has a problem, then we will continuously repeat the same problems that we had before. If you look at the culture in Kenya, it tells you we have actually a problem. Even before we get to the political year, like 2022, look at simple things like, how do you drive? Mombasa, we've just come through Mombasa Road. It tells you that there are people who will never obey traffic lights.
So it's taken back to the people. You're taking this back to the people.
It is back to the people, the software of the people. Look at issues of how we talk to each other. Even simple mannerisms would be a problem. And so for us to be able to build a nation, and I know the DPP talked about Britain, which doesn't have even a written law, it is because they have been able to build a culture for a long time that is based on value. And in the past, I have said that we must have a political system that is based on values. We must also have an education system that is based on values. We must have religion that is based on values. Otherwise, even if you have all the laws instituted, let me tell you, if you don't change the heart of a human being, it becomes a problem.
Let me throw it back to NCIC, because you can't tell us that almost how many years later you're still asking for powers. Was it deliberately compromised, the act compromised by politicians not to hold them accountable? Having read the whole act, because I believe as a commissioner, you have the act at your fingertips. Do you think it was deliberately watered down and compromised by politicians?
To some extent, yes. You know, the act is a product of politicians. It's an act of parliament. And usually they are very careful when they are legislating. So they don't put a rope on their neck. We right now have an amendment of the act in parliament. We want to enhance the act, but I don't think we will achieve much in making it stronger, because the same people are the ones who are going to legislate in the House. In Kenya today, if you look around, the first customers of that act will be the politicians. So it's going to be a little bit difficult. But as my brother Reverend said, laws aside, Kenyan culture has to change. We have been left this way by the colonial powers or the colonial government, divided into tribes, you know, into regions, not tolerating one another. And that hangover was brought forward to the independence government. And we've carried that luggage up to today, that we don't tolerate one another as the people of Kenya, as the leaders of Kenya. You see, even the leaders themselves do not tolerate each other. So they give bad example to the people they lead. From even the first government, Oginga and Jomo Kenyatta did not tolerate one another. Kibaki and Raila did not tolerate one another. Right now, the DP and the president are not tolerating. You know, it is a whole reflection of a system of you know, people that are not tolerating each other. So we need to sensitize our people.
Right.
It's more civic education so that we tolerate one another. You know, we don't have a spare country, by the way.
True, this is it.
This is Kenya, the only country we have. We don't have an inch extra. What we have is the four corners of this country, from Mandera to you know, Logochokio.
Yeah, all the corners.
Lunga Lunga, Lamu, and that's it. Moyele, that is it. You don't have another inch. And so you're either taking care of what we have, or you become a refugee.
Part of the problem. And this conversation, gentlemen, will continue later on, right here on Kivumbi 2022. Kisa Wandera is standing by with the day's news. But definitely what's worrying even at this point is hearing that either it's hopelessness, need for power, but those who would empower you having ulterior motives, perhaps, because it affects them. So an important conversation to take forward. And so Ken will be back with Akisa. But right now, look at our top stories this evening. Please stay with Kivumbi 2022.